So you decided to get a snake, but you're still deciding which species? No problem. Let's go to the top 5 I would recommend and bust a massive myth along the way. Once you've decided to get a pet snake, the options kind of explode outward from there. Nowadays, there are dozens of species readily available and sometimes hundreds of morph combos in each species. Then for the first time keepers, of course, their question becomes, what is good for a beginner? You think that's a straightforward answer? 'Tis not so. Depending on who you ask, the bias kicks in, and honestly, if their first reply isn't, well, what are you hoping to get out of a pet snake? Or something along those lines, any answer should be instantly discounted. Then there's sometimes a stigma on the whole no such thing as a beginner reptile. I mean, even Adam Wickens from Wickens Wicked Reptiles came out with a video about this in the middle of me planning this one. Ask in the wrong online forum and you'll be berated for saying the word beginner, not knowing exactly what research you should do to know exactly what snake you want to get out of the gate. Like they didn't have the same questions when starting out. So in spoiler, if you've watched this video and if that line wasn't enough, I share many of the same opinions as Adam on this subject, but not all of them. I want to be sure to stick around to the end because I'm going to show off one of my favorite babies I got this last year. If this is the first time we're meeting, hi, I'm Will. It's a pleasure. My passion is nerding out about the awesome animals that I keep and breed, and especially helping newbies in the hobby. The fact is, there's an entry point for nearly everything. Every market, industry, hobby, skill, anything. Naturally, there's sort of an entry point to reptiles for most people. Yeah, you'll get the one-off person who is dead set on a certain species, will do the research, figure out the care for the animal, and jump in. However, most beginner keepers and keeper families need a place to start, and that is where beginner lists come in. So I'm going to rank these in order that I would recommend them in general. However, I will give you a few points for each to help you decide where you fall on that list and hopefully know what is a good beginner reptile for you specifically. So what makes a beginner reptile for me? Well, snakes make beginner lists because they're low maintenance options. As I said in my last video, reptiles come with some added complexity. It's a feature, it's part of the fun. That being said, some species have more complexity and are more sensitive to that complexity than others. Beginner species tend to be on the less complex side and less sensitive to that complexity. As you move up in complexity and narrow the margin of error in that complexity, you get into species that will be a bit more to learn. And then the other part of this is, do they stay in a smaller enclosure their whole lives? Or are they species that will need more space in your house? The problem with some species, like cute tortoises, is that you get a really cute little animal, maybe it fits in your hand, but then that animal grows large enough to take a substantial portion of your house. Sort of an important point before getting an animal that lives 20 plus years like most snakes do. And when I say small, I don't mean they can live in a shoebox size container their entire life. Just that for their size relative to other species, they thrive with less space. While some animals really do need more cruising room or maybe even vertical room to thrive. The other factor that isn't talked about near enough is temperament, and we'll call it personality of different species, though maybe feel is better. I don't know, but in that area. Every animal is an individual animal and will have its own personality, differences, and quirks, but there tends to be a certain general feel around a specific species. What I mean by that is there are really shy animals that are going to spend most of their time hiding, while some are more curious and cruise around more. Are they consistent eaters even to a fault, or are they prone to food strikes which could really stress a new keeper out? Are they easy to handle? If so, why is that? Is it because they have prehensile tails, the ones that they can hang on to you with? Or is it because they just sort of ball up and sit there? While talking to beginner keepers, I want to know these things, so that's what I'm going to add to the conversation here. All right, so number 5 are ball pythons, Python regius. And yep, that's right, one of the most commonly quoted first reptiles is only number 5 on my list. And honestly, they wouldn't have even made it if I hadn't cheated a little bit and combined a few species for another recommendation. So that is coming from a biased party since I breed these too, but it is what it is. This is Chocolate Chip. He's a 3-year-old and he's pretty close to full size and he's already breeding size. So what are the pros of ball pythons? Well, they are easy to handle. They're usually not flighty, pretty calm, though they don't hold on as well as some pythons do. They are called ball pythons for a reason. Some of them, especially upon initially pulling them out, are just going to ball up. But this guy is a neighborhood favorite. He gets out a lot, so he's pretty comfortable. So they do well in small enclosures, and even if you get a beast that gets 6 foot, it does exist, though it is rare. They're not going to need a 12-foot enclosure. So they're easy to find and they have lots of morph combos, which are the genetic mixes that give you all the color and pattern differences. So what are the cons of ball pythons? Well, they can be picky eaters and go on food strikes for no reason. It can be really annoying, even for experienced keepers. Another thing beginners should know is that the right heat, humidity, substrate to maintain that humidity, they're all really important for ball pythons. And if you don't have that dialed in, they can have trouble shedding if the humidity drops too low or the heat drops, and that can also contribute to food strikes. Some of them can be more active in general, like chocolate chip here. They, in general, spend most of their time hiding. They like dark places, and in the wild, they live in mammal and root burrows in Africa. So who are ball pythons right for though? Well, if you fell in love with ball pythons and you're set on getting one, the cons are not hard to get past. And they're still on the beginner list for a reason. As long as you do your research and know what you're getting into, you'll be fine. They're really great for anyone who's going to be nervous with a flighty animal and are much easier to allow kids to hold with some supervision. All right, so number 4, the Western hognose, Heterodon nasicis. Again, a really frequently recommended for snake that I actually have towards the back of my list. And again, that's coming from a biased party who breeds these. So these species, in my opinion, like ball pythons, I think they get recommended because there are a lot more breeders. And they're 2 species that have really helped the hobby to blow up here recently. So today this girl is going to be joining me. She doesn't even have a name yet. She's about a year old, and I just really like her. She has a great temperament and she's beautiful. So the pros of hognose are that they do stay pretty small. They're easy to handle. They do well in smaller enclosures. They're naturally semi-fossorial, meaning that they spend part of the year underground. And they, that's what they have the snout for, that they're named after. It helps make them super cute too, and they're known for being a little derpy. I mean, look at that face. They're easy to care for and have a bunch of morph combos to choose from. She's in blue right now, but I'll make sure to get some footage of Candy. She's our pink hognose and super pretty. So the cons though are that they can go on hunger strikes for no apparent reason. Though for adult males, a lot of the time it's when the temperature outside drops. They naturally brumate in the winter when it gets cold, and that's when they just bro down and chill out for a while. Yeah, not apologizing for that one. On the other hand, I have had some that are so hungry all the time that they'll just randomly try to eat one of my fingers. They aren't that smart. Really cute though. Fantastic pets. So who are they for? Again, like balls, if you have a love for hognoses is what drew you in and love the dirt, none of these cons are hard to get past at all, and they'll make fantastic pets. All right, so number 3 are spotted pythons, Antaresia maculosa. These are one of my all-time favorite species for so many reasons. This is Navani. Let me know if you recognize that name. She's 2.5 years old and won't get much bigger than this. She might fill out a bit, that's it, might gain some weight. Antaresia is the smallest genus of pythons in the world, and they're from Australia. Spotted pythons are the biggest species in that group and top out around the 4-foot mark and stay very lean like this. The other pro to them is that they are very easy to handle since they are pythons and hold on really well with their prehensile tail. That just means they have full control of their tail and will use it to hold on to you and anchor. They are the most consistent eaters of any species that I know. Very, very curious, generally fun and cute, have generous care requirements. Seriously, one of the best species to keep in my opinion. And I have sold people on snakes with this girl. They are probably the funnest species on the list, to be honest, just overall. So what are their cons though? Well, the only one that really matters to me is that they can be really food focused, and that's where the consistent eater to a fault even comes in. Always get them out with a hook because they might see a warm moving thing in their enclosure and decide to go for it and ask questions later. I'll have a whole video on interacting with your snake in the enclosure at some point. I'll also add that if you handle and work with them consistently, this con sort of disappears. This girl has never mistaken me for food, and all my babies are really easy to get out of their enclosures. But this is because I handle them a lot. This girl is one of my go-to ambassador animals and is frequently held by kids with no issues. She is a literal neighborhood favorite. So the other possible con though is that there are only a few varieties outside of Australia. But I think the wild type is beautiful. They have this natural iridescence that's hard to pass for me. So honestly, it's a con, but only if you're really looking for a bunch of different morphs. Until the past few years, they had been historically a little bit harder to find, but here recently, they're on Morph pretty consistently. So who are they for? Spotted pythons are for someone who wants a really fun animal, something a little bit different. I mean, they're not even real big in the hobby yet, and is confident in learning a little bit about the animal, some proper handling techniques, but you should really be learning those with any pet snake. So number 2 are the larger colubrids, and that generally means corn snakes and California king snakes. They're not the same thing, but they're close enough that I can group them together and cheat a little bit. And since I don't breed these species, I only have the one. This is Sozin, and that's because I thought she was a he at first. And if you know that name, let us know. It's one of our favorites. These species have been a staple beginner for literally decades. The first species I was interested in breeding as a kid at about age 9 were California king snakes. So the pros, you can find them anywhere. You can find information on them anywhere. They are great eaters for the most part and have really simple care requirements. They're also one of the best display animals on this list since they explore a little bit more, especially during the day. And there are tons of color morphs, and they are also a little bit less intimidating to some people than a python, since especially corn snakes have much more of a derpy, cute personality look to their face. They do have some cons though, and I always hesitate to put them this high up on lists, especially over spotted pythons. First, folks forget that they can still get 4 or 5, sometimes 6-ish feet, and use more space than other species, even though they stay pretty lean. They will do fine with a minimal setup, but are more likely to thrive in a larger enclosure with room to cruise around. Rat snakes, which corn snakes are a type of rat snake, will even use vertical space if offered. And then as babies, they do tend to be a little bit more defensive and hide, or are really zippy and hard to handle sometimes. The only other con is that some people think they are boring, but I mean, come on, are any snakes really boring? So who are they for? And these really are for anybody, but that can be what makes them a little bit dangerous. They can very much sometimes dangerously, because of the space requirement later specifically, be an easy button. And I know parents, for sure, that is often the case. But they're also easy to care for. Beautiful, develop calm demeanors as they age. And since they tend to cruise around more, if you want something that is a little bit less intimidating than a python and have the space for a good display enclosure, they're great options in this group. All right, so number 1 on the list is the Cape house snake, Boedon capensis. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. They have blown up in popularity for a reason, and after falling in love with them myself a couple years ago and now keeping them, it's really hard to have another top recommendation that I could apply generally across the board. This is the new baby, I promised to show you. He is a little less than a year old. He's a KZN with some albino in him, and absolutely gorgeous. So he doesn't even have a name yet, and he's a part of a breeding pair that I got this last year. They're the perfect size, topping around 3 to 4-ish feet and stay really lean. They do great in smaller enclosures. They eat really well, generally calm and really easy to handle. I mean, this guy's pretty dang calm. And because they have prehensile tails, they generally are really good about anchoring, easy to hold on to. They are fun and like to explore, a little bit curious. And with the simple requirements, there are more and more morphs becoming available as well, which I think is going to make them just grow in popularity. They also have the added bonus of looking awesome. They have these awesome eyes with really distinctive brow lines and have great color and patterns in general. It's sort of like having an exotic feel of a python or boa species in a colubrid care size package, sort of the best of both worlds. So cons, they can still be small and flighty as babies like any other snake. As you can tell, he's pretty calm, curious, and likes to explore, but I have a female that's pretty flighty still. And while they're becoming more available now, they haven't historically been easy to find, especially if you're looking for specifically capensis. In the hobby, there's this issue where if you're looking for capensis specifically, a lot of the house snakes are just referred to in general, and even Morph Market currently has these all grouped together right now and incorrectly still grouped as colubrids. It's just a nerdy pet peeve. They're no longer classified under Colubridae. So when you are looking for a capensis, look for Cape in the name or one that's listed specifically as capensis. And if you have any doubts, just ask the breeder. There are a handful of other species and they are really cool too. There are green and black house snakes that I'm in love with. The reason that I recommend Cape house snakes specifically is that they are the most consistent eaters and do well with simple care setups. So they're really for anyone who wants a little bit of everything out of this list. They're sort of the best package in all-in-one snake. If you are in love with one of the other species, that doesn't mean jump to these. That's not what that number one means to me personally. The number one is if what I talked about really rung true with you and what you're wanting out of a pet snake, that's your number one. And so just because I have these as number one, because if I had to pick one species that I recommend as a beginner, it would be them. It doesn't mean any of the other ones are bad as a first pet snake, but that this one kind of has the most well-rounded package. So this ended up being longer than I originally wanted it to be, but hopefully you're a little bit more confident and know what you're looking for, and maybe even confident in using the term beginner when you need to. And if nothing else, you know where in this list of beginner pets that you need to start looking and doing your research. None of this is gospel. Do your own research, and if you still have questions, I've kept all of these. I breed most of them, and I love nerding out and talking about these awesome herps. So you can leave a comment down below, you can shoot me an email, whatever, and I'll get back with you. If you're still trying to decide if a pet snake's even right for you, I have a video about that, and I explain a little bit more about that complexity as an added feature. But the next part, if you have decided you are ready for a snake, the next part of the conversation is getting you set up before you ever bring a baby home without spending money on stuff you just don't need. So I'll see you over there. Until next time. Semi-fossorial, meaning they spend part of the year underground, which is where they get that snout. That's what they have, that cute little snout again, man. What's with snout? Oh, I love your eyes, guy.